And welcome to First Take. I'm Carrie Champion. That's Skip Bayless.
Hi, Carrie.
Sitting in, hello, gents. And sitting in for Stephen A. Smith is Freddie Coleman and Ryan Clark. We got a full house today. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Oh, wait, so it takes two to replace one?
Yeah, well,
It takes two.
Oh, yeah.
I guess. Stephen A's hard to replace.
But you know what?
I'm going to be silent on
You're
that.
going to be silent on
Yeah.
that one? Well, at least we have two guys who know what they're talking about today as opposed to normal. I miss you and I
We
love you,
miss you,
Stephen A.
Stephen
Get back
A.
soon.
Backhanded compliments already.
It's just too early for that. Coming up on the show today, Wes Welker says the Broncos were not prepared for the noise during the Super Bowl, so we ask why. We will debate. In front of First Take, now Hall of Fame linebacker Derrick Brooks will join us, plus coaching great Tony Dungy will be on the show.
By the way, Derrick Brooks has a bone to pick with me.
Yes, he was mad at you.
He was mad.
Derrick, so bring it, okay? But first, let's talk about the Broncos, shall we? Broncos, Wes Welker said they were not prepared for the noise at the Super Bowl, which was pretty interesting. He told MMQB this: that's the way the start of any Super Bowl is. It's going to be loud. The fans are going to be yelling. They don't really know why they're yelling. It's just the start of the Super Bowl. We didn't prepare very well for that, and it showed. Well, Welker is now 0-3 when it comes to Super Bowls. His comments probably from experience, perhaps frustration. We asked this question: who deserves the blame for the Broncos' loss? Skip Bayless, the question's for you.
Carrie Champion, and for you guys, in case you missed our show yesterday, I first of all want to reiterate, I mostly give credit to a Seattle defense that deserved a collective MVP and to a young quarterback in Russell Wilson who made clutch throw after clutch throw after clutch throw, and to a Percy Harvin who turned that game into a one-man track meet. I give credit. Now, let's step back and consider Wes Welker. Somewhere Bill Belichick is shrugging and saying, this is what I don't miss about this guy, because this guy will go after his head coach, and he just did it again, going after John Fox. Was there some painful truth in what he spoke? I believe there is lots of painful truth there. If I were on the Broncos side, I wouldn't like it that he said it publicly, but for our sake, I'm glad he did. Because I thought Peyton Manning and company got blown off the football field by the early noise that they did not anticipate in that game. So I blame a John Fox, who Jarrett Bell reported during one of the weekly practices, turned down the crowd noise that they were using because he thought it wasn't going to be a factor. I blame Peyton for getting blindsided by this because Fox was in 2 Super Bowls, Peyton was in 2 Super Bowls, and Wes Welker was in 2 Super Bowls. So I blame Wes Welker for not making a bigger stink about, hey guys, we better be ready, because here's what I think happened, and I don't have any scientific proof of this. I think those Seattle fans were so rabid that in the off week before the Super Bowl, with prices plummeting because of the fear factor of how cold it was going to be outside, they snapped up a whole bunch of extra tickets that they knew usually would not get. As Fox and Peyton have said, usually at Super Bowls, you know this, it's fairly quiet out there compared to a home playoff crowd, right? Because it's a few scattered fans here and a few scattered fans there and a whole lot of corporate people who don't really have a rooting interest in the game. Is that fair? Is that what you experienced?
Very true.
Okay, so in this case, somehow the 12th man traveled and commandeered and took over the stadium. And on the first play of the game, this still blows, after I've had 2 nights to sleep on it, Peyton Manning, with 2 weeks to prepare, with the most precision offense in all of pro football that shattered regular season records. On the first play, he steps up to audible, and Manny, being Manny Ramirez, snaps it over his head into the end zone for a safety. I don't believe they ever quite psychologically recovered. And I thought, and again, I'll welcome your take on this, I thought the first 3 series they were having a hard time audibling because the crowd was just louder than they were ready for. They didn't have any trick audibles to beat crowd noise. It knocked them off their feet, and they were on their heels for most of the first quarter. And by the time Peyton finally got any rhythm, it was way too late in the game. So I believe Wes Welker is right. I don't think he should have said it, but it's up for discussion. Your take.
I don't blame that on anybody. And even if you say Peyton Manning, Wes Welker, John Fox, all these guys have been in Super Bowls, you still have to understand who you're playing against and the type of crowd that they're going to bring. I remember getting to Pittsburgh after they beat Seattle in the Super Bowl, and they talked about how that was a Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl crowd. Well, this year, with the 12th man and with the team that Seattle's had, these guys have traveled. And like you said, when the tickets were plummeting,
Yep.
they were picking up everyone they could. Even watching you guys' broadcast last week, when you see any film or any camera shot of New York City, it were 12th man jerseys,
Everywhere.
Russell Wilson jerseys,
Yep.
Richard Sherman jerseys,
They did.
and they were everywhere.
Yep.
They were out in bunches. But you also have to look at the Denver Broncos and say, with your precision offense, with the games you've won on the road this year, none of that couldn't carry over to help you beat the noise. There was no way that Peyton Manning, Wes Welker, Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, these guys could get things going the same way they've gotten them going on the road in many other places. Even though Seattle had a lot of fans, it wasn't enough fans to make it a home crowd. It wasn't like playing in Seattle. But if you look at what Denver did, they did what they did all year. They threw short passes to Demaryius. They threw screens. They tried to hit West in the seam, tried to hit Julius Thomas in the seam. They just got beat by a better team. I thought what you said in the beginning was perfect. Give the credit to the Seattle Seahawks. That's who we blame for the Broncos losing.
Right.
The Seattle Seahawks were a more physical team.
Yep.
They were better up front, and they were more excited to play football. I remember coming out the second half when they announced that Percy Harvin was, going back to take the kickoff. I looked at my frat brother. I said, hey, man. I say, when he takes this back, it's over. And then
It probably didn't happen exactly like you thought it would, because you probably didn't anticipate a pooch kick, right?
Right. Well, this guy leads the league in touchbacks, but it's in Denver. It's in Mile High. Maybe they thought he couldn't get it out in MetLife, but then he runs it back and it's over. So the whole game, these guys from Seattle made every play that they had to make, and Denver never counterpunched.
All points are well thought out, but it comes back to the basic standpoint that once again, Wes Welker is making an excuse. This guy's 0-3 in Super Bowls, and each time they've lost in the Super Bowl, it's never been about we lost as a team. Now, Peyton Manning said, I don't want to hear the word embarrassment. It's an insult, because he's a major competitor, and he doesn't want people to think for 1 second that everybody in that locker room was embarrassed. He was speaking up for his teammates. He didn't want to hear they got embarrassed, even though we all know that happened. You lose 43-8 in the Super Bowl. If that's not an embarrassment, then you better find a better word than that one, because that's exactly what happened.
Right.
But here's the deal. Why would Wes Welker, and to your point, Skip, I'm glad that he said it too, but at a certain point, dude, you're 0-3 in Super Bowls. Why are you starting to make an excuse each and every time? All of a sudden, it's John Fox's fault that this team wasn't prepared for crowd noise? Dude, you're playing on the biggest stage again for the third time in your career, and each time you have not succeeded on that big stage. Anytime they needed you, Wes Welker,
the second
you
time,
have
a lot of Patriot fans thought he dropped.
Somewhere Giselle Bundchen is saying, I told you guys in the airport.
Same thing.
Somewhere Tom Brady's wife is going, I told you guys in the airport that day that this guy was a problem. At a certain point, to your point, Ryan, the Seattle Seahawks beat the spit out of the Denver Broncos. 43-8 is no fluke. But I'm sick and tired of hearing guys like Wes Welker saying, well, we weren't prepared properly. We didn't know about the crowd noise.
Wait, but Freddie, in that same article that we just read from, we were told by John Fox that he decided that there shouldn't be any simulated crowd noise.
You're a
So
player.
is there any reason to put any blame on him?
Carrie, you're a player. They've given you the game plan.
Yeah.
Crowd noise to me has nothing to do with it, because you're not playing in Seattle. I know those fans are going to be loud, but you play in Mile High Stadium. Your fans are pretty loud when you play in Denver if you're Wes Welker. You've known that all year long when you play 8 games.
Turn
The
it
thing
down
is, though,
when Denver's on
when you're getting drummed, though, they were getting drummed.
They were getting drummed.
They were getting drummed, so the crowd just kept up.
Right, the crowd kept up. But you know why the crowd kept up? Because Richard Sherman and all those guys were knocking them around.
Richard Sherman didn't play in the game.
He didn't?
They didn't throw it over there.
He played.
Yeah.
He looked good in his uniform. He didn't decorate the field. But at a certain point, if you're guys like Wes Welker, stop making excuses. Stop saying that John Fox turned down the crowd noise, or we weren't prepared for this or prepared for that. How about saying, you know what, we lost 43-8. There's nothing we can do about it. Stop pointing fingers at people on your own team, which is the third time that Wes Welker has done this every time he's lost the Super Bowl.
Okay, that's fair. But back to Ryan. Give me your take. I'm reading a lot into the very first play of the Super Bowl that is a complete disaster for the Denver Broncos. And I'm reading more into it than usual because Peyton Manning is a neat freak. He's a raging perfectionist. He has 2 weeks to prepare. Fox is reporting that he's called all these coaches. Bruce Arians has emptied his playbook for Peyton to tell him every little weakness of every single Seattle defender. So his brain is spilling over. The pressure is enormous. We talked about it for 2 weeks. I said that he had the ability in this game, the capability of winning what would feel like 2 or 3 Super Bowls in one night against that defense.
Right.
So this is it. And he wants it to start right. I'm sure they have a 15-play script, when you think. But he wants to check off on the first play because he wants to see what they're doing. I don't know what the checkoff was. But for that play to abort that badly, I'm not sure that Peyton could recover quickly from that. As great a competitor as he is, it's the last thing you could imagine happening on the first play with 2 weeks to get ready for the Super Bowl. Something that hasn't happened all year to them. Right? Would you agree with that?
I think the thing going to the game, you know what your strengths are, and you're going to rely on those. Seattle knew running the ball and defense was their strength. And if you're the Denver Broncos, you got to think this offense and Peyton Manning, this is how we're going to win the game. I think for the whole team, it was tough to recover from that first play. The excitement of the Super Bowl is different. You know, there's not a dry eye on the sideline when they're singing the national anthem. You know, guys are really in tune. And so that first play is so important. And I think Peyton was trying to be so perfect, such a perfectionist, and do so much that he got Ramirez mixed up because he said that Peyton wasn't supposed to step up after what he said. So I think it just blew the whole team early in the game, and it was tough for him to recover.
His biggest strength is his biggest curse in playoff games. Being that perfectionist, everybody feels that. So when things go wrong, we know it's going to show on his face, and everybody sees that on the sideline. And to your point in the first play, I think everybody was affected by that. But don't make excuses.
All right, well, let's stay there with Peyton, the perfectionist. So we were kicking this around in our morning meeting about Peyton Manning's legacy, and obviously people will continue to talk about it. But you brought up a good point, Freddie, which I thought was interesting. Do you think that Peyton Manning can win another championship?
You know what? As much as I love Peyton Manning, I don't think there's a player that I respect more what he's been able to do, not just for the NFL, but kind of revolutionizing the quarterback position. Quarterbacks used to be told what to do from a play calling standpoint. He became a coach on the field again, like what used to happen in the old days with Johnny Unitas and Joe Namath and people like that. But at the same time, if he couldn't get it done after the season that he had with 55 touchdown passes, over 5,400 yards passing, and granted, Seattle's defense was outstanding, Father Time is undefeated. He's getting older. The league is getting younger and faster. Coordinators now will see what they were able to do, because we all know this. If you get a quarterback off his spot with pressure, anybody is going to look like an average quarterback, and he looked below average because of Seattle's defense. I just think with his advancing age and the fact that he's not going to get any better than he was this year, I don't see another Super Bowl championship. I think he's going to be one and done when it comes to that one championship, and that's it for Peyton Manning.
One and done. Ryan.
Super Bowls are a team achievement. And, you know, I know the quarterback gets a lot of the blame when they lose, and we've given Peyton tons of praise for the season that he had. I don't necessarily think he has to be better than he was this year to win a Super Bowl, but he has to have a better team. And I don't think Denver's going to put a team around him that's good enough for him to win another Super Bowl. I think Peyton will still be good next year. I think he'll put up good numbers. It's not about the league getting younger or him aging, because he's a anticipation quarterback. You know, he's a quarterback that beats you cerebrally before he beats you with his arm. You know, so for him, age, I don't think age affects him like it's going to affect the Colin Kaepernick or Cam Newton and these guys who have to get other things into their game as they age. So I think Peyton will still be a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl, but with where he is now and the mistakes that he's made in the big game, he needs a better team around him. You know, you think back to the Super Bowl he won in Indianapolis. It was Bob Sanders and that defense
and the running game
that won that Super Bowl. It wasn't necessarily Peyton Manning, even though he got the MVP.
So better team, better defensive players.
I think he needs a better defense, but Peyton Manning has to have a defense that can play Peyton Manning football. Peyton Manning's going to get a lot of points. They're going to pass the ball a lot, so you need to be small on defense. You need to be fast, and you need to keep people in front of you. That type of defense doesn't win Super Bowls. They may not win 13 or 14 games with a different type of defense, but if you build a defense built on toughness, a defense built on attacking, then if Peyton Manning doesn't have a Peyton Manning-esque game in the playoffs, you can win. And also, you got to be lucky. Things have to go your way. And this year in this game, it didn't go his way.
So yes or no? Can he win another championship?
I think he can.
Okay.
I think he can, but it's not a Peyton Manning question to me. Is Peyton Manning a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl? Yes. Does that mean he will? I'm not sure.
I really disagree with what Freddie said. He is highly capable of winning another Super Bowl. I have to remind you, he threw 55 touchdown passes, 5,477 yards. And I thought in those 2 playoff games, albeit at home, I thought he looked more athletic than I've ever seen him look. He was moving around. He ran for a touchdown. His arm looked, I'm not going to say Cannon-esque, but an Elway-esque, but it looked pretty good to me in the 2 playoff games. Now, when he got knocked off his spot against Seattle, got off wrong, yeah, it all went to heck in a hurry. But John Elway has been a wizard with their salary cap, and I expect him to move and groove through the offseason and do some things that'll have you sitting back saying, wait a minute, he got Wes Welker? Remember, I don't know how he got Wes Welker under his cap. It sounds like they're going to lose Eric Decker. I'm not sure he played in the Super Bowl either, but that's a whole other story. Von Miller will come back, I assume, and I assume he would have really helped them Sunday night.
No question.
Ryan Clady was for a while the best left tackle in football. I don't know this for a fact, but I assume he's going to be okay and come back and be the blind side protector. Peyton barely got touched in the first 2 playoff games, so now we're back to your point. Will the rest of the team be good enough? Because I think Peyton Manning, off what happened Sunday night, will come back with a vengeance next year.
I don't doubt that he won't come back with a vengeance. Father Time has not been kind to guys like that, especially at that position.
You're correct.
And that's what you look at John Elway, the last 2 Super Bowls he won. Terrific running game with Terrell Davis and a defense that's still underrated in my opinion. But when they needed him to dial it up in his final game against the Atlanta Falcons, he still had enough because he was not carrying the organization.
I agree.
That's why I think Peyton Manning will have a hard time doing this because he's still carrying the organization.
John Elway in his first 5, 6, 7 years in the league was Cam Newton. He ran with the ball a lot, and he took a lot of licks.
Yeah, he's a gifted quarterback.
And he said, my body was failing me at age, he was at 38 at the end. So Peyton will play next year at 38. Could I see him playing a couple more? I could, because he doesn't take much punch.
But even a drop-off because of Father Time, what he throws 48 touchdowns next year.
This way,
I'm still good enough
to say he's going
to
to
win
throw
the Super
48
Bowl.
because he had such a special season. You don't go from 55 touchdowns and then throw 50 the next year, even though the rules are a lot liberal against your defenders in the National Football League.
I don't think he necessarily has to for the Denver Broncos to win a Super Bowl. They have to get better. Offensively, I think they'll be fine. They have to do a better job defensively, and you can't have the Trendon Holiday fumbles, and you can't have the Wes Welker, non-Aussie calls, on the punt return. Those things can't happen in order for you to win a Super Bowl, and you can't have after the Super Bowl saying, you know what, we just weren't ready for the noise.
Yeah, maybe Peyton needs to lighten up. Maybe if he lightens up, everybody else will lighten up around him.
Oh, gosh, I could say that about a lot of people I know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Somebody
anyway,
to your left.
Anyway, our friends in Vegas seem to disagree with you, Freddie. They think that Peyton and the Broncos are co-favorites to win the Super Bowl next season. Where does Seattle's defense rank among the greats?
I'm going to go for one single season. I'll go Bears, 85 Bears 1. This Seattle defense 2, and Ray Lewis's defense 2000 number 3. All time, that remains to be seen. But I give this group, Legion of Boom, a real shot to go down as the all-time best.
Long term, I think about the, I love the steel curtain, me, Joe Green. These Seattle Seahawks did this to Peyton Manning, and they damn near shut him out. This may be, in my mind, the greatest defensive Super Bowl performance I have ever seen.
During Super Bowl weekend, our next guest was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We welcome Derrick Brooks back to First Take. We'll get to your issue with Skip Bayless and your Super Bowl Bucks defense in just a moment. I know you want to let him have it, but first off, I just want to say congratulations on the Hall. Take us back to last weekend when you heard the news. How does it feel to be among the elite, Derrick?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. And, the feelings that you go through, sometimes you can't find words to describe it. I was such a nervous wreck this past Saturday, and I did the best I could to make the day short. I even joined my wife, and when she got her nails done, I got my nails done, just to try to pass the time. But, it's nothing like it. And when I received that call from David Baker that I was elected into the Hall of Fame, an outpouring of emotions. Obviously, you can say you cap off a career, but I took a few moments to take in all that it curtails. But at the same time, it was bittersweet for me because Tony Dungy, John Lynch, or even Mr. DeBartolo, my partner in our charter high school, did not join me. So being the team guy that I am, I couldn't help but think about them But I must tell you, I haven't even let it soak in. I may have had my first Hall of Fame inductee moment, though, yesterday. Our good friend Chris Carter, he was talking to us as we were starting to have our meetings, and I had to go sign a Pro Football Hall of Fame ball. So I grab it, and I reached to sign it like I normally do, and I was getting ready to put $55. And Chris said, no, what are you doing? And the lady looked, she said, you can't do that. You got to sign HOF 2014.
Aww.
I say, guys, it's gonna take me a while to get used to this. So
HOF
forgive
2014.
Me, but yeah, so little things like that, I'm quite sure, happen over the course of the next few months, and it'll really start to sink in that I've been blessed to be an inductee in the Hall of Fame.
Derrick Brooks, this is your old friend Skip Bayless. First of all,
how you doing, my young friend?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I do want to personally congratulate you. I tweeted this on Saturday night. No one in that Hall of Fame deserves to be in there any more on and off the field than Derrick Brooks does. Now, yesterday, near the end of our show, after we uttered those words that you just saw in that clip leading into this segment, I looked down at my phone and I have a text message from one Derrick Brooks, who has a bone to pick because we had just talked about the Steel Curtain Steelers and the 2000 Ravens and the 85 Bears and, of course, what we saw on Sunday night from these Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom. And not once on First Take yesterday did the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense come up. So I give the floor back to you. Explain to me why your defense belonged in that debate.
I feel our defense, for whether you talk about a one season or you talk about the course of time, I think Tampa Bay defense of the late 90s and early 2000s deserve to be in any conversations. When you look at how we perform over a consistent basis for years, how we performed in the 2002 season, I think a lot of that kind of speaks for itself. And take nothing away from Seattle and what they did this past Sunday. I picked them to win, and I said they would play great defensively. I've seen this story. I've been a part of this story with a great defense playing a great offense. So I know what can happen. And I think the difference in what we did from a defensive standpoint, we put the ball in the end zone. When you talk about all those other defenses, you look at how many times we scored that season, 9 times. So we came offensive, and we didn't have, a great offense at the time. Obviously, Coach Gruden coming over affected our football team, and it brought a different attitude to our organization offensively. But if you put up the numbers in all the categories, 2002 Buccaneer team deserves to be in that conversation. Now, whether we 1, 2, 3, or 4, I don't know. But the fact that you guys did include us in any of those conversations, Skip, I had a little bone to pick with you and Stephen A.
Derrick Brooks, I must admit publicly, I stand corrected. I went back last night, this morning, I looked at the numbers. I must tell our viewing audience that year, 2002's Tampa Bay defense had better statistical numbers across the board than this year's Seattle defense did. That year in the playoffs, you shut down what I thought was a high-flying, fast-scoring San Francisco Jeff Garcia offense. You beat them 31-6, albeit at home. But then you went up to Philly, and you did a 27-10 number on Donovan McNabb and company. Then you went to the Super Bowl, and here, Derrick, is why I've always attached an asterisk to what you did, and why I've discounted your achievement in the Super Bowl. Obviously, at that point, I was actually covering the Oakland Raiders. They were the #1 offense in the NFL that year. Rich Gannon was the MVP of the NFL that year. But your new head coach had been their old head coach, and all I heard after the game was how Derrick Brooks and company knew everything that Rich Gannon was about to do because John Gruden had taught you well. Actually, there's only 1 week to prepare for that game, but that you basically
exactly.
But you did know, according to all the reports I read, what Rich was going to do, what he would audible to, what every little tell was in their offense. And so I must admit, I've discounted 48-21, in which you picked him off 5 times and ran 3 of them, including one by you, back for a touchdown. 3 pick sixes in one game off the MVP. So is that
Skip,
true?
I would. Yeah, what we did was had indicators, just like we do every week. We did not have 2 weeks to prepare for the Oakland Raiders. We had to fly cross country in one day. So I give us even more credit that we was able to go out and do this in a short period of time. Now, what Coach Gruden did, and I think a little bit of that, got, way out of hand. But what Coach Gruden did, though, he gave us a lot of indicators. Hey, if you guys show Rich Gannon this is probably how he's going to think. This is probably what he's going to audible to. And we had indicators going in. But at the end of the day, they knew what defense we was going to play. We did, we lined up, we played. And everybody talk about the loss of their center affected them. Well, you know what? When we went back and watched tape, their center actually played pretty good. Now, the tackles, I can't say the same because our defensive front got after them. But I would say in terms of preparation, though Coach Gruden gave us indicators, we still had to go out there and perform. And they had a run. Remember, going into the end of the second and the third quarter,
they did.
Oakland, they went on a run and kind of got back in it. So the same indicators and plays that we knew about, they made plays against us. But we came back and shut them down in the fourth quarter. Now, I will say they were not used to our speed. And I will say that we didn't have a guys on our team that had Super Bowl experience, very much like Seattle. And they were not prepared for the speed of our defense. And it really started to show in the fourth quarter when they started to get on a run defensively. We came back and shut them down. And I'll say this, even though we're talking about defense, Coach Gruden, he knew their defense. And our offense went out and they ran the football very effectively in the Super Bowl again, which was to the strength of our defense. So from a number standpoint, obviously, I will accept your apology, Mr. Bayless, on national TV. Thank you for doing that. But I want to look forward to see what Seattle does from this point forward with this defense. And I will say this about our defense. We was a very unselfish defense. A lot of us on that football team decided to take less money, myself included, to stay together and be dominant over time. We'll see if that's the same attitude or if Seattle and John Snyder could do the same thing in keeping that defense together moving forward. Because if they stay together, I could see sustained success.
Well, sure. Are you suggesting there might be more selfish players on this Seattle defense than was on yours?
No, no. They're a very unselfish team now. But the bottom line is this, and you guys started to talk about it. These guys were drafted late.
Yep.
A bunch of us, myself included, I was drafted early.
Yep.
Now, when you talk about some, financial ramifications, the reality is these guys are going to want to get taken care of. Now, not I say that I decided to take less, meaning I decided not to become a free agent. And a few of our players did that on our defense. Now, that's not saying anything about them. I just want to see what the economic impact is going to be on keeping this team together, because I will admit it's very hard to do that in today's game because of the new CBA.
Okay, now I'm going to put you on the spot. Just for our younger viewers who may not remember, that Tampa defense of yours featured a Hall of Famer, obviously, in yourself, in Warren Sapp. I assume John Lynch eventually will be in the Hall of Fame. I'm virtually sure Rondé Barber will be in the Hall of Fame. He's in my Hall of Fame. Simeon Rice had Hall of Fame talent. Not sure he'll get in the Hall of Fame as a pass rusher. That remains to be seen. I want you to rank that defense all time, now that you've been reminded about these other defenses that we've thrown out on the show the last 2 days.
Are you talking about one season, or you want to talk about over a period of time?
Let's do period of time. All-time great defenses, where does yours rank?
I would put Tampa defense, and you can pick whatever many years, 5, 10, 7, I will put us in a distant second to the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Steelers have the Super Bowl rings and we don't. I mean, you look at the Bears, It was a 2-3 year span. You look at the Ravens, it was only a 2-3 year span. But you look at the numbers of this Tampa defense, and you're going to see consistent high-level play, Skip, for at least 5 or 6 years.
I'm with you, except for one glaring glitch here. The 85 Bears, another team that I was around a lot, had the most awesome single-season defense I have ever seen. I anticipate that thing would have gone on and on and on if Buddy Ryan, the architect and driving force, hadn't left town. Really, he'd already announced it before their Super Bowl win over New England to go head coach in Philadelphia. So it's hard for me to discount even though the single season that they lasted. I still have to put them slightly ahead of you because, Derrick, in my heart of hearts, I believe that defense was a little better than yours. It was a little more psychologically intimidating because of the pass rush.
Yes. But the facts are Coach Buddy Ryan left.
He did.
And when Coach Buddy Ryan left, now we changed head coaches during that time. Now we kept the same defensive coordinator, but we had different coaches lead that went on to become head coaches. So I wouldn't put the coach fact in there. The fact is, now Monty Kiffin, he stayed there and I was there, two of the constants. But I can't agree with you on that because Coach Buddy Ryan left. The players were still there. We were still there. So, again, I kind of disagree with you on that one.
All right. Derrick Brooks.
Okay, let me go one other direction. Real quick while we have you, Derrick. I want your quick opinion on this. The voting process that just got you in the Hall of Fame is the same process that has kept another player I covered, Charles Haley, out of the Hall of Fame for yet another year. Charles Haley, as you know, the only man alive with 5 Super Bowl rings. I covered him in Dallas. I had my battles with him. He's got a side to him that is not nice. And many of the reporters and writers who vote have publicly stated they just had so many off-field issues with Charles Haley that they cannot bring themselves to vote him into the Hall of Fame. Your thoughts on that process?
Skip, this process is tough. Man, I can only imagine what those 46 guys go through in determining that list. Coach Dungy and I was together a couple weeks ago in Tampa, and we were just saying when we were in the final 15, how could we get it down to 10, just us two, with the guys on that list. And there is no criteria, there is no fact sheet that you can go to, and say if you do X, Y, and Z, this will get you in. And maybe that's the the issue. But the process, it is what it is. Obviously, any human element in it when you got to vote is going to bring things such as you're talking about to the table. And obviously, I'm a fan of Charles Haley, and I also awesomely respect, what he's been able to accomplish with that. But at the same time, I don't know, what made Derrick Brooks, comparing myself to a Will Shields. What was the difference in Derrick getting in and Will Shields, who was an offensive lineman, didn't? I don't know. And that's the tough job that they have. And that's why, as much as I, feel slighted for my other guys, I also got to recognize, give these guys credit for finding a way, whatever it is, to come out of there with, at least 5 current modern-day inductees.
Bottom line, Derrick, you were the off-the-field flip side of Charles Haley, and even with your media relations. But in the end, it's an outrage that Charles Haley, a driving force of 3 Super Bowl teams in Dallas, 2 in San Francisco, is not in the Hall of Fame.
Derrick Brooks, thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you a question. Who won the debate, you or Skip, when it comes to the defense?
Oh, clearly me. It was clearly me. You you should have had your referee shirt on.
I should have.
You go ahead and throw it over here. And it's to use anytime. Anytime I go against Skip, I always find a way, to get one leg up. But it's a tough one. I mean, he's a tough dude.
He's not that tough. He's a
he's
softy.
A tough opponent.
He's a tough opponent.
Yeah, you don't have to debate me.
Joakim Noah picked up 2 techs in the second half of his game yesterday against the Sacramento Kings, which apparently sent the Chicago center over the top and out of the game. After the ejection, you saw him point at each ref and yell an expletive. He later issued this apology. I'm really disappointed. Shouldn't have acted that way. I apologize. I'm sorry to all 3 referees out there. They're out there trying to do their jobs, and I should never have said the things I said. We welcome in our NBA analyst, all-knowing PJ Carlissimo. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, and by the way, we finally have someone on the show who really knows basketball.
Shots fired. Can Stephen A. defend himself?
I miss you, Stephen A.
We miss you, Stephen A.
Sure you do.
Adam Silver in place. This is his first job, perhaps. What should the league do about this?
Well, it won't get to that. This is way below Adams, no question. It'll be just normal. Technical fouls, all technical fouls are reviewed, all calls are reviewed. So Rod Thorne will look at it with his people. Maybe Matt Winnick gets involved, and they'll say 2 technicals was enough, or they'll tack a little fine on top of that. I don't want to speculate, but if the language was what it appeared to be on TV, and it was equal opportunity, it wasn't 21 ref.
They all got it.
He got the whole crew. It may cost him a few more dollars.
Okay.
I think it's going to probably be like a $25,000 fine. And I'm not defending Joakim Noah, but watching the foul call they placed on him against DeMarcus Cousins, I've seen people breathe on other people, and that's more of a foul than what happened last night. I'm not going to condone his action. You can't do that if you're Joakim Noah, who I feel is the leader of the Chicago Bulls. And I think the fact that he apologized because he clearly knew he went above and beyond that line is probably going to help his case. At the same time, though, you understand why players get frustrated, because plenty of fouls were not called in that game and they let it go. And then something like that in which he's boxing out or trying to not get boxed out by DeMarcus Cousins, and he had a complete momentary lapse of reason. So, yeah, he's going to face a fine about $25,000. Adam Silver's going to, like you said, it's just going to be 2 technical fouls. But the fact that he apologized and really was contrite and didn't put out a statement through somebody else just by himself, that really, I think, made a big deal why he's not going to get a bigger fine.
It'll help him, but I didn't care for either call.
Neither did I.
thought he got fouled going in the
Absolutely.
basket. I think it was Jason Thompson.
Okay.
Rodney Mott made the call. No call at one end. He got the tech. He chirped. He got the tech. No big deal. The one down at the other end, again, the call came from outside. He kind of put a hand up. That was it. But again, the way he handled it, Joakim is so competitive, but he lost it. The plays were close to each other. I think they were within 3-4 minutes clock time of each other. Didn't like either call, but you can't defend what he did. You can't say the things he said. That's an automatic T.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was all 3 guys. He involved the entire crew.
Opportunity employer.
Yeah, which is fine.
Triangle of expletives. From
And they can't,
Noah.
Chicago, their margin for error is so narrow as it is now. They were struggling. I don't think it really would have made a difference, to be honest, because Tech was playing very well. But, I mean, their margin for error is such. They need everybody on the floor, especially Joakim Noah.
Okay.
I hear every word you guys just spoke. I agree with every word both of you just spoke. And yet, I believe Joakim needs to be suspended for a game, just one game to send a message. Look, I would want him on my team. I oversimplify life into some people have a good heart and some people have a bad heart. He's got a good heart.
I agree.
Great heart.
No question.
He plays on the emotional edge every minute of every game, which is what I love about him. But every once in a while, when things don't go his team's way and his way in this case, he goes over that edge. There are just certain things you can't do we can't use the phrase, but I think most people know what we're talking about, to say you and you and you. Neighborhood I grew up in, that's a challenge. That's a line you can't cross without starting a fight. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's fair.
So I'm saying when you go to that length to say that to that authority figure, and you also, that maybe it does land on the commissioner's desk. This is
it won't go near Adam's desk.
But I mean, maybe he wants to have a little input here to say, you know what, there are certain lines that can't be crossed, and we're not talking about a 5-game suspension, just one game to say, hey, Joe, come on, man. I mean, you just can't, whether you apologize, you lost your emotions at the moment. He does get technical fouls. Not that he's the highest in the league, but he's had, I looked at 43 in 7 years. But he'll get them occasionally because he'll flare up and lose it for a while. But just to protect the authority of the authority figures, that's just me. And maybe I'm overreacting to this.
Do you think if it was not Joakim Noah, if it was somebody else who did not have a penchant for getting technicals or being that fiery, do you think your mind might change of not having a 1-game suspension on him?
He just has a history of losing his emotions, letting him run amok. And so maybe at some point, as more of a veteran player, you just have to say, Joe, it's enough. You got to stop now.
Okay. I think Rod Thorne looks at what he said, which is really wrong.
Yeah.
How he said it, which was really wrong. But he's going to put it in the context of what's going on in the league. And again, they look at these things all the time. There's a precedent somewhere. Like, what did somebody else do a month ago, and did they tack money on? Did they suspend
I'm not
him?
sure I've ever heard this happen
In the
before.
league. Yeah, I was going to ask you
Do
that.
you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
That epithet directed at you, and you?
Well, I don't know that I can remember it to all three, but it's been
to
said.
one,
and,
but
and
not
again,
to, okay.
Rod will have in his mind, and he's going to know the history, and he's going to say, hey, when this has happened in the past, this is what we did, and that's going to be his decision. That's what Rod Thorne has a great sense. To me, that's the basketball person in the NBA office. He'll know. So whatever. I won't be happy if I'm Tibbs or Joakim if he comes down hard, but he has the perspective.
Would you want him on your team?
Joakim?
Yes.
Oh, are you kidding? I'd walk to pick him up and try and carry him on my shoulders. I love him.
Yeah, he's a self-made player because when he was drafted out of Florida in the second round, people said, you know what? That guy may be in the league 2 or 3 years. What skill does he have? Well, he may be a master of all trades. Should I say jack of all trades, master of none? But what he brings to the table, it's an essential part of your basketball team. This guy played on one leg and helped the Bulls beat the Nets last year in the playoffs. Sorry to bring that up.
No, we'd have been playing Miami if Joakim wasn't.
Yeah.
He was the difference, particularly in Game 7.
So he's averaged 10 points and 9 rebounds, and somehow shooting the most bizarre-looking free throw I've ever seen.
The helicopter.
He makes 73% of those shots. And I'm saying, I don't know how you do it. Like you said, he was too thin coming out. He had no shot, no real offensive game, and yet
he changes the game.
A
lot of guys don't change games. He changes the game, which is a great thing.
All right, PJ Carlissimo, thank you for joining us. You can come back anytime. Well, the same weekend that Mack Brown resigned as head coach at Texas, 4-star safety recruit John Bonney, a longtime Texas commit, has this to say about what Mack Brown was telling recruits.
I was at my official visit when Mack Brown resigned, and he told us to go look around. He'll even, talk to other coaches for you and everything, because he really just wanted the best for us as players. It wasn't about, if you're going to come to UT, stay here. But he just made it to where he really cared about us. So he told us to do that, and that's when I had scheduled my officials to Auburn and Baylor.
Oh, wow, okay.
Wow.
Officials to Auburn and Baylor, not to UT. So, Skip Bayless, what do you make of this?
Carrie, like everyone else in the media who's ever met Mack Brown, I love the guy. Known him for a long time. Believe in him. I watched this video, this kid from Houston Lamar High School last night, and I was shocked by it because it really sounds awful. It comes across so poorly. Obviously, if you think, was Mack thinking in a vacuum, it's just fair to these kids to let them know this is happening, and maybe you should look around, consider your other options. But how many times, I've never heard Mack say this exactly, but I'm pretty sure he's used the line before, you should recruit the school, not the coach.
Right.
This is the University of Texas, and I've always, even though Mack's not from Texas and didn't go to Texas, I always thought he bled orange, that he was Texas till he died, and that he will be an ambassador for that school till death do him part.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I don't get this because it's absolutely the wrong thing to say, and it comes across as potentially sabotaging the next head coach, whoever that might be, because you wouldn't have known at that point. Yeah. I just don't like it. And again, I'm having to trust the kid, and you just saw him. He sounds like pretty matter of fact. It came across like that really happened. Now, is the kid have some bone to pick? I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm trusting what the kid said. And we haven't heard from Mack yet, so maybe we should put a little asterisk beside this. Just wait and hear what Mack says. But this is just wrong. You cannot say that to those kids at that time because you want them to stick with the school that you allegedly love till death do you part.
I think this flies in the face when coaches say you recruit the school. It's about personal relationships. And if Mack Brown had a personal relationship with all these recruits or his recruiting coordinator or any coach recruiting that area, the kids are going to that school because they have a relationship with their coaches. Mack Brown was very hurt by what happened at the end of Texas. I'm not saying that this was a strike against the school, but he probably is thinking, well, if these kids aren't going to have the relationship that I sold them on or that my staff sold them on, then you know what, maybe they need to look elsewhere to make sure that they don't come here, no disrespect to whoever's going to be the Texas head coach after me, that they come in and say, you know what, I was sold a bill of goods, and now they can't deliver on it, and now I'm in limbo. Maybe he wanted these kids to make that decision before they got to the University of Texas. Now, Skip, you're exactly right. This is awful from the standpoint of, if Mack Brown said this, as much of a class human being as he's been with the University of Texas, although if you talk to some North Carolina fans, the way he left their school to go to Texas, they don't want to hear that. And you know they have a fair point.
They do.
That he left their school in the lurch to go to University of Texas, but you don't turn down that job. But if he said something like this, if this turns out to be true, I would hate to think that's like a final salvo for the career of Mack Brown. I wouldn't want that to be like the Woody Hayes situation with him. Not trying to compare the two.
No, I know.
Woody Hayes' great career, people still remember the punch that he threw at Charlie Bauman of Clemson. I wouldn't want this to be the final thing for Mack Brown's coaching career, that he told kids not to go to Texas because he was so hurt by how the university did him wrong, even though he was not winning towards the end of his
So you
tenure.
think there was some spite motivating this?
I would think, I know if I'm at a school that I really loved, if I bled orange and the burnt orange of Texas, and then things happened at the end that was not to my liking, you know what? We're all human. We've all have been there where we've been in a position, whether it's been a relationship or a professional relationship, that if you felt you've been done dirty, there's a little bit inside of you that's going to be a little spiteful. Not saying it's wrong, not saying it's right, but it's human. So if Mack Brown did that, I'm not giving him a pass on it. But I clearly understand that a school that you bled burnt orange for, and this is how they did you at the end, you know what? Well, if you don't want me here, why am I going to send people here so the next coach can bear the fruits of our labor?
And somewhere, Charlie Strong has to be saying, thanks a lot, Mac.
I appreciate it. Right. Well, speaking of, currently Texas's 2014 recruiting class is ranked 14th in the country. We'll see how that all pans out.
ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The Miami Heat have won the 2013 NBA title.
Major League Baseball.
The Boston Red Sox have won the World Series.
The full championship series.
The tide has risen again. The third time in 4 years.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
Our next guest is one of 3 men to have won a Super Bowl as a player and as a head coach. We welcome to the desk Tony Dungy. Thank you so much for joining us here on First Take. And before we get into Super Bowl 48, let me talk about this new book you have out. It's called Uncommon Marriage. And from my understanding, you wrote this with your wife, Lauren. Tell us a little bit about the book.
We did, and it really is just kind of talks about our life and some stories that illustrate some principles that we think can help people in looking at their marriage. So we're excited about it and fired up that it's actually just releasing today.
You actually, I heard you this morning on Mike and Mike, and you were talking about how in the book you went to jail or arrested. Give us the particulars. Tony Dungy and jail don't go hand in hand.
No, I was in Kansas City. I was an assistant coach working late at night and got stopped and given a traffic ticket, a speeding ticket. And I didn't think it was right, didn't think I was speeding. I thought actually there might have been a racial element behind it. So I didn't just pay the ticket. I went to court. The judge found me guilty, but he said, I'm only going to charge you $5. And I said, well, I don't think I'm guilty, so I'm not going to pay. And I ended up going to jail for a brief period of time. So, yeah, a lot of people don't see me and jail going hand in hand.
Skip, he didn't want to pay the $5.
Wow.
He went to jail.
Unbelievable. I think I'm going to rush out and buy that book right now. Hi, Tony. It's Skip Bayless here. Can we get back to the football field here just for a moment, as painful as it might be for you? Could you please explain to us what the heck happened to a man you love, Peyton Manning, last Sunday night?
Well, I think the Seattle defense just played outstanding football, and they got up on him, they suffocated him, and those things happen. It just unfortunate for Peyton that it happened in the Super Bowl, but Seattle's been doing that to people all year, and they played outstanding.
Is it fair to say that Peyton also had a bad game on Sunday night?
Well, he was off, but I think the Seattle defense forced that. They made it happen, and you know, sometimes it can go that way. You had Derrick Brooks on a little earlier, and I remember in 1999 we played St. Louis. They're the greatest show on turf. We played them in the championship game, and we got a bunch of interceptions, held them to 11 points. We lost the game 11-6, but we held them about 30 points below their average. And, you think, well, hey, defensively, it was our day. We had all the answers. The next year we played them in Tampa and barely hung on to win like 35-34, and Kurt was on fire. So it's just that's what happened that day. Seattle capped a great year with a great performance.
I know it's hard for you to be objective and step back because you have so much respect for Peyton and you spent so many years with Peyton. How big a hit do you think his legacy took on Sunday night?
Well, I don't think his legacy is going to take a hit in the long run. It took a hit Sunday, and for the next couple of weeks, that's all we'll talk about. Peyton not winning Super Bowls, not winning the big games. Dan Marino, went to one Super Bowl, didn't play great, didn't win it. And we look back now, and I think everybody understands that Dan Marino was a great quarterback. John Elway didn't win, went to several Super Bowls, didn't win them. At the end of his career, won the last two, and that made all the difference. So we don't know where Peyton's gonna be. If this is his last game, maybe his legacy does take a hit. I think he'll be back, and I think he'll continue to win and maybe win a couple more.
Oh, so you could see him playing, 2-3 more years?
I could see him playing 5 more years.
Really?
If he desires and has that energy. I think physically and his love for the game and everything now with the Twins and, family.
Yep.
I don't know how long he's going to play, but physically I think he could play 4 or 5 more.
All right, switch gears for us quickly. You were obviously on the task force that investigated the Johnathon Martin situation in Miami. Project for us. How is this all going to turn out as you see it?
Well, let me say this. The committee that Steve Ross asked us to be on, Dan Marino, Jason Taylor, several other people, our job is going to be to look at the report that Ted Wells and the NFL give. We have not seen any of that information. We haven't actually gotten together. We're going to respond to that information. I will be anxious to see what that entails. I spoke to Johnathon Martin on NBC. I talked to him for an hour or so I know his side of it. I'm looking forward to seeing the total picture.
Can you explain to us, Tony, what the issue was between you and Coach Philbin in Miami, that he took issue? He thought maybe you were blaming him, and then you guys, according to Chris Mortensen, spoke. How did that fall out?
Coach Philbin called me after the show aired on the Today Show, and I said at the end I thought Johnathon Martin could play in the NFL but needed a different locker room situation, a better locker room situation for him than Miami was. And Coach Philbin called me and wanted to know what I meant by that. We talked about it, and he let me know his feelings, and it was really it wasn't any animosity at all. He just wanted to get some things across from his point of view of what that Miami locker room was like and what it was all about.
If you had been the head coach, how differently would you have handled that situation?
Well, the thing you have to understand, and Johnathon Martin said it on our show, he never went to Coach Philbin and told him what was going on. Even when he left the team, he said he was having personal problems and needed to get some help, but he never explained why, never talked about it. So as a coach, you can't deal with something if you don't know what's going on. Now, the other side of the coin is you got to have the right type of people and the right type of leadership in the locker room so that kind of thing doesn't happen. You had Derrick Brooks on before, and that to me is what would have been different about our locker room, the type of people in there that say, hey, we've got to solve this problem before it ever gets to the head coach.
Tony, give Carrie and me your step-back perspective on this issue. Carrie and I and Stephen A. Smith last Thursday night in New York City attended the Fritz Pollard Alliance banquet, obviously the driving force behind the Rooney Rule. And at the end of that program, my friend John Wooten, the chairman of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, spoke and basically said he will not rest until he sees the same representation among coaches and in front offices in the NFL that he sees on the field among the players, the black representation. Is that a realistic, or how realistic is that goal to you?
Well, I think it's a great goal to have, and I know John is very passionate about it. You have to look at where things have come. When John played, there were no black coaches. no minority coaches. When I came into the league, you could count the assistant coaches, minority coaches, on one hand. Now we do have great representation in the assistant coaches, and it has gotten better. We have head coaches when there's a head coaching change, and Jim Caldwell goes to the Detroit Lions, Lovie Smith goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's not news anymore. It's not headlines. So we have made progress. Is it exactly where it needs to be? I don't think so. When you look at the front office situation, general managers and ownership, is it where it needs to be? Not yet. Hopefully we can move towards that, and I appreciate what John Wooten and others have done for that. The game has made a lot of progress. I think there's still progress to be made.
Well, Tony, you speak of progress. Can you get specific in terms of what type of progress needs to be made? You said you've seen it change from the time you're a head coach to present. But what else could be done outside of working with the Fritz Pollard Alliance?
Well, I think we have to change the atmosphere in terms of what people are looking for. And, especially with minority candidates, you're not always going to be the hot name. You're not always going to be the name that everybody knows. You're not going to be well publicized. But that's okay, and it happens. John Harbaugh was not a well-known name when he went to the Baltimore Ravens. But Ozzie Newsome played in the league, understood what he was looking for, did a thorough search, and said John Harbaugh is the best guy for us, and John Harbaugh took him to a Super Bowl. Mike Tomlin was not a well-known name when he got the Pittsburgh Steelers job. Dan Rooney had a game plan of what he wanted, did a thorough search, and got a coach that took him to a Super Bowl. To me, that's what needs to be done in the NFL. And the more we can get that and the more we can have people be thorough, they'll find good candidates, whether they be minority candidates or not. And I think that's all you're looking for.
Yet, Tony, I still step back and I see only 4 black head coaches, 32 head coaching jobs. Not sure how much progress that yet represents. Your thoughts?
Well, it's progress from when there was 0, and the fact that, we can talk about it. Guys can be in the pipeline, so to speak, get the interviews, and then the owner has to determine what he wants to do. But are we there? Are we perfect? Absolutely not. But I do think that we have made progress. We're getting better. We're getting to the point where it's not an issue. I see much more progress on the field and coaching staffs than I do in the front offices. And to me, that will help too. When you can get an Ozzie Newsome in the front office to be the decision maker and determine who we're going to hire, that is where we're going to really see the progress.
Tony Dungy, the pleasure is all ours. And once again, the book is Uncommon Marriage. It's released today and sold in bookstores everywhere. We wish you luck, and you're welcome back to the desk anytime. Cleveland has announced the hiring of Kyle Shanahan as the Browns' offensive coordinator. You may remember under Shanahan, Robert Griffin III set NFL rookie passing records as well as rushing yards. So with Shanahan at OC in Cleveland and the team most likely drafting a quarterback, we asked this question: do you think that Johnny Manziel could be a good fit? NFL analyst Ryan Clark is back. Freddie, you're back as well, and black.
All day, every day.
All day, every day. Power to my people. Ryan, good fit or not?
First of all, I'm a Johnny Manziel fan. He's my favorite non-LSU Tiger football player.
Really?
Every week.
I'm surprised. I thought you might go the other way.
Man, every week we had this discussion about who was our favorite player. Ike Taylor loved Johnny Manziel. Obviously, William Gay went to Louisville, so he'd always talk about Teddy Bridgewater.
Mm-hmm. And that was you guys in the locker room.
Right. That was a constant debate every week. And I was like, man, if Johnny Manziel is on TV, I'm watching him. And with that being said, you got to think about it. Cam Newton had this great Heisman Trophy candidacy and year, and then Johnny Manziel comes in, he has a better year than Cam Newton has, and then he comes the next year and has a better year than that statistically and also just passing. And so I look at Johnny Manziel, I feel like he's an NFL quarterback. I think he's going to be able to play this game at a high level. And also Kyle Shanahan has had to work an offense around an interesting quarterback with a specific skill set before. He understands how to give a quarterback one read in the passing option. He understands how to use the zone read. And then going into Cleveland, you have Josh Gordon, who's an extremely talented young wide receiver. Jordan Cameron, a pass-catching tight end. You have Little. Now, the running back situation is kind of in flux there. Once you lose Trent Richardson, they were searching all year to find a guy who could run the football. But I feel like in a zone read system, you don't need a stud running back. You need somebody who can hit the holes fast, understand, what he's reading and what the quarterback is reading. So for me, Johnny Manziel would be a great fit. And also, Cleveland Browns fans are crazed. They're looking for something to be excited about. The dog pound is looking for somebody to rally behind. So I think Johnny Manziel would be a perfect pick for Cleveland. Now, the question is, though, should he go at 4? I think that may be a little early for Johnny Manziel to be drafted.
As much as you love him, that's too early.
I just feel like Johnny Manziel is a later first-round draft pick. Now, with the quarterbacks coming out with him and for the specifics that you want in Cleveland, you can take him. I think you'll win with him there. But when you draft a guy 4th, he has to come in, play right away, and play well for you for a long time.
Well said, by the way, because you may have to play against this guy in your division if he's going to go to Cleveland. Here's why I think it's not a good fit for Johnny Manziel to go to Cleveland, and it's purely for selfish reasons. They've had 19 starting quarterbacks since 1999. I do not want a guy that I love watching play each and every Saturday in college football go to the quarterback graveyard that's been the Cleveland Browns since 1999. The list is ridiculous. Spurgeon Wynn, Thaddeus Lewis, Tim Couch, Luke McCown, Bruce Gradkowski, Kelly Holcomb, Jeff Garcia, Brady Quinn. Trent Dilfer was even a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I don't know what's going on with the organization. I think Mike Pettin can be a good head coach. We'll have to wait and see. But if I'm Johnny Manziel, I would not want my career to just be derailed by going to Cleveland. I know plenty of Browns fans sick and tired of people picking on their team, but your organization has not been a good organization. When you've had 19 starting quarterbacks since 1999, that's like Groundhog Day, the movie with Bill Murray. Every day it's 5:59, Sonny and Cher singing "I Got You, Babe," and you're in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. At a certain point, when did the Browns get out of their own way? If you're Johnny Manziel and the Cleveland Browns are thinking about taking you, you have to say to yourself, do I really want to go there and have my NFL career derail from the start? That's why, for selfish reasons, I love watching play so much. Going to a quarterback graveyard that Cleveland has been, I don't think that's a great fit for
Even
Johnny
with
Manziel.
those guys you named, though, which guy came in other than Tim Couch, who was an extremely good college football quarterback?
That's fair.
Those guys you named, none of those guys we thought would be great anyway. They were going to the graveyard because there was nowhere else for them to go play football. I think Johnny Manziel can change that.
I hope so. I don't want him to be dragged down, though.
By the way, I love "I Got You, Babe." It's one of my all.
Side note.
60s on
side note.
60s. I'm a
But
60s
he brought
man
it up.
too.
I gotta say,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm humming it in my head right now. When I first heard this, I thought, no, please don't do this to Johnny. I'm all about personalities fitting places or teams.
Right.
But you did open my eyes a little bit, being in the AFC North that you have been in. And I have attended a number of games in Cleveland. I agree with you. It is rabid. They are on hair trigger, wanting somebody to do something right. They actually had some moments last year, early on.
Brian Hoyer's was not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah,
not bad.
Nope.
Yeah, they had a Thursday night game, I remember, that was fun to watch. And we had Josh Gordon on the show, what was it, last
week.
Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday.
Hey.
I remember the jacket.
That Michael Jackson jacket?
Yeah, I remember.
Nice.
I remember the jacket. It was sweet.
No lie.
It was sweet.
It was.
So was he on the football field.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the year, he had a 4-game stretch where he put up numbers no one has ever put up. Yeah. So I had forgotten about that. Josh Gordon would make people forget Mike Evans at Texas A&M because, to me, and again, this is just me because I'm a huge Johnny fan, I thought Johnny made Mike Evans more than what some people say Mike Evans made Johnny.
I'm with you on that one.
Mike Evans played high school basketball at a high level. He can go up and get it. He can, as they say, high point it. Not the fastest guy, has a hard time separating. Johnny could throw him open a lot of times. But in this case, from the X's and O's potential, from the Kyle Shanahan, who to me became the good Shanahan, like the good half of the equation, because the other guy, I just don't know. Whatever. I believe he undid my other guy, RG3, in D.C. So Kyle always seemed to be the good cop there. And you're right. Kyle was figuring out ways to utilize a skill set, at least when RG3 was healthy as a rookie, that made him the top QBR of all the young quarterbacks his rookie year. So, X's and O's, fandom-wise, I like the fit. But sometimes, as you know, I was watching Jeff Chadia's piece on ESPN about Marshawn Lynch. It was sensational. But Marshawn gets drafted by Buffalo out of Oakland, out of Cal. And he got there and was like, where am I?
Right.
And it never quite fit for him. And so he finally gets traded, and he's okay in Seattle. And then he becomes Marshawn. It's beast mode.
Right.
So I would worry that Johnny would feel fish out of water, a Texas kid born and bred. And has a chance to go, and you're saying 4 is too high. To me, I'm going to say it one more time. The Houston Texans will forever regret if they pass Johnny Manziel with the first pick, and you're overdrafting him there. When it comes to a franchise quarterback, a kid who played college football the way he did 80 miles up the road, you can't miss, because you want to talk about a fandom on fire. The cupboard is not bare. It's pretty full there on both sides of the ball, to me. Maybe they got some offensive line issues, but still, I believe Johnny could go in there. I'm heaping pressure on him because he responds to pressure just the way Richard Sherman does.
Yeah.
I believe Johnny could go in there and be 10-6 as a rookie. He has that kind of potential. He is fearless. Again, he often tried to do a little too much because he had the 109th ranked defense in college football.
He had to score 50.
He had to score 50, and he knew it going in.
And the offensive
so he
line
would
was
take some
suspect at times,
chances.
too.
And against Auburn, he took a chance late in that game and got his shoulder banged up. He did come back and play. Then his knee got a little banged up, and then he hurt his thumb. And it was one thing after another. And by the time they got to their last 2 away games, one of them, unfortunately, at your place at LSU, he was kind of playing on one leg. And then they went to Missouri against a hellacious pass rush, and he had a kind of a tough night. But I believe he can light up pro football in the right place. And maybe X's and O's wise.
Wait, Freddie, let me ask you this, because he thinks 4 might be too high. He thinks he can go high as 1. Your thoughts?
If I'm the Houston Texans, I'm not trading out of that spot. I'm taking that guy. I'm not going to say he's a 10-win quarterback from the jump, because they do have offensive talent. Nuke Hopkins, a wide receiver with Andre Johnson. You got Owen Daniels at tight end. He's no slouch in the ring either. Brian Cushing will come back on defense. They're going to be pretty
Remember,
good.
Arian, I think, will be healthy again.
But either way, Johnny Manziel, with his ability to make plays outside the pocket, that's going to help your running game. You're not asking him to run 10, 12 times a game, but 5 or 6, get a first down here and there, that can help. I just think if you're the Houston Texans, Matt Schaub is not coming back, because I don't know what went on, but at a certain point, you can't go forward with that guy anymore. He has proven that he can't win a playoff game with that franchise.
I agree.
If you're going to start as a new head coach of the football team, and you bring in a guy like that who, to your point, he loves when people doubt him. He loves when people put pressure on him, because he says, oh, yeah, well, we'll see. And then he'll go out there and do some things.
I mean, it would be great for Houston.
Yeah, that's why I think they should do it. That's why I think they should
go to Houston Texans. I'm not saying that it would be a bad pick from that standpoint. But even with heaping this pressure on Johnny, which we kind of saw him flourish in college. He got all the bad press in the offseason, and he came in and played a great season of football. I feel like Cleveland is slower. Cleveland's going to be slower for him, and the pressure of carrying the franchise and the state won't be on Johnny Manziel.
I think he would relish that, though.
I feel like he would. I feel like in Houston, under Gary Kubiak's system, he would excel. The rollout system, the zone read, gives him opportunities to get out of the pocket, but they wouldn't put it all on Johnny Manziel in that system. Now with Bill O'Brien going and playing a pro system, and he's a Bill, and we're talking about fits. He's a Bill Belichick guy.
Fair.
That's not Johnny football. I feel like if he gets an opportunity to go to Cleveland and be charismatic,
I'm afraid of it.
Well,
right. And so for me, that's what keeps me kind of being sketchy on Houston, because if you draft him and those two guys butt heads, you have to make a decision.
Well, I think Bill O'Brien is good enough as a coach that he knows how to coach personalities. And if he can do that, like he was able to do in New England, because there are a lot of varied personalities with other coaches and other players. I think Bill O'Brien's the kind of guy that would be able to make that work, and that's somebody that Johnny Manziel would respect, like he respected Kevin Sumlin down at Texas A&M.
Can I heap the ultimate pressure on Johnny football?
You mean you haven't done it already?
I'm about to.
As he watches.
Let's just project. Let's do the hypothetical. Let's say he is drafted by the Cleveland Browns. Let's say he can stay relatively healthy for the next 5 football seasons. I believe in the city of Cleveland, he would become as big as LeBron James used to be. Because it's more of a football city than a basketball city at heart.
I agree with that.
Just Okay, now I'm really heaping the
And
pressure.
they're really good friends. There's a lot to it. Didn't they sign with the same
Yes, they
agency?
did.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Yes, they did.
Dwyane Wade scored 30 points and had 10 rebounds in the Heat's 102-96 win over the Pistons. It's the first time since March 14th of 2012, that Wade led the Heat in both points and rebounds. We welcome back our NBA analyst, PJ Carlissimo. We asked you because Wade has been struggling. You know, he's got the knee injury. He's been sitting out some games. Is this a blip or this is pretty much a trend? Is he back on the mend?
Well, I don't think it's a trend that he's going to lead him in points and boards. That other guy they have, number 6, is probably be a factor. But
okay.
I think D. Wade's played very well. Eric Spoelstra's managed his minutes. They've sat him for 13 games. Now, LeBron said a week or 10 days ago, maybe it's upsetting their chemistry a little bit. But I think when it's all said and done, Spo needs to have Dwyane Wade healthy at the end of the year. When D. Wade has played, he's played well. He's played very well this year.
Yep.
He's just missed a lot of games. So I'm not surprised to see him. He's really continuing to play at a very high level, I think.
He's averaging close to 19 points a game, over 4 assists and 4 rebounds. He doesn't have to worry about the stress of carrying this organization. Now, I get the sense that his ego is past the point that he's not worried about that nonsense anymore. He's got 3 rings.
It's about rings.
It's about championships. And to your point about Eric Spoelstra, you know this as a coach. You don't want Dwyane Wade playing at peak efficiency late January, early February, especially with all the miles that he has on his tires playing in the NBA. He's played so hard for so long. Remember the commercial that he would fall all those times, would get back up? They want to make sure that he doesn't have to do that in the playoffs. So if you're going to manage his minutes and regulate his minutes, if he has a 30-point game against Detroit, that's fine. You want those games where he's getting 20 to 25 in the playoffs, where LeBron is getting 20 to 25 and Chris Bosh is getting 20 to 25. Those things mean a lot more than Eric Spoelstra. So this is a complete blip, mainly from the standpoint of they're not expecting him to do that. When it happens, Miami is not going to lose. But it's more important that he's healthy and that he's right when the playoffs roll around for them to make it 3 straight championships, not trying to prove something to anybody against the Detroit Pistons team that has talent, but has not played to that talent all season long.
He's not shooting free throws. My only concern is he's got to get his free throws back up. He's in the low 70s, which is not good for
his
legs.
legs.
And he's missed some at the end, but he's going to be fine. You know, if I'm Eric Spoelstra, and I'd love to be, I'm not worried about LeBron James and D. Wade and Chris Bosh. There's other things you'd be concerned.
He's got a good gig, doesn't he?
Not D. Wade, and he deserves it. He's done not a good job. He's done an exceptional job. That's not easy.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I don't know. If I were Spo, I think I would be worried about D. Wade. I'm the biggest fan. He's going to be the death of me on this show because it seems like every other day we're forced to do a topic where, is this the end? Is he shot? Is he done?
Right.
I know for a fact he has a bad wheel, and I don't think surgery will fix it. I think he has a degenerative condition in his cartilage and a knee, and the great Tim Grover can go to Miami, as he just recently did, and work him a little bit back into shape. And then all of a sudden, we see, albeit against Detroit, we see an explosion of, oh, that guy, he's still there. That was pretty vintage to me. I agree with your free throw point.
But he's been good. But he's been good.
He's
during
had
the year.
flashes.
Skip.
He's had flashes.
I think he's played pretty well, considering. You know, they've had him out of 13 games. That's what Pop's done for years. Now, not kept him out for that many games.
I agree.
But he's managed the minutes, and I think I'm still a D. Wade believer. He was second team All NBA last year.
Yeah.
I think there's still gas in the tank.
Well, he's being treated as if he's a San Antonio Spur. That's how he's being coached right now, right? Where you give him 2 games off, you give him a game off, and all of a sudden, a little bit when you least expect it, he wasn't just good for a half last night. In the fourth quarter, he took the game over, albeit against a Detroit team that is struggling. What are they, 18 and 39?
But beat them in Miami the last time they played. So
and
they did. That's a good point.
Miami wanted to send a message last night. You're not beating us here twice.
And they get paid too.
Okay, fourth quarter, Dwyane Wade makes 4 out of 6 shots, 9 points. They had a 9-0 run that finally left Detroit behind because Detroit was hanging in the game, and he scored 7 out of the 9. That is vintage. And we saw flashes of that in the finals when they absolutely was a game 5 at San Antonio. All of a sudden, oh, that guy's back. And all of a sudden, it's a series again. Because if San Antonio had won that game 5, it would have been hard for Miami to climb out of that hole. So he's back, and I believe in the end, he will be there for LeBron when he needs him most.
That's fair.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about another star in the league. KD is not nice, and he doesn't like his new nickname. Response to a fan coining the phrase Slim Reaper. KD says, quote, "I'm here to shine a bright light. I'm not here to be a guy of, I guess, death. I just like KD better." Now, I follow him on Twitter and Instagram, and I believe when he says, "I'm here to shine a bright light," that's a biblical reference for him. So, PJ, what does this say about Durant, in your opinion?
Kevin Durant is who he is. He's totally comfortable in his own skin. A lot of guys are not. He's not a glamour guy. He's not a talk about me guy. He's about winning. He's about the team. He's a gym rat. All he wants to do is be the best player in the world, and he's got a leg up on it right now. He might be like 1A right now. He's going to work. He's going to play. He's totally comfortable not doing
Timeout.
press
He's
conferences.
1A, who's 1B?
1 is
Okay,
LeBron,
okay.
1A
All right,
is KD.
all right.
But he's right there.
Okay.
He doesn't want the attention, but the choice, positive or negative, like, I kind of like the picture. I thought it was a cool picture, that Grim Reaper.
I like it.
That's not him.
Yeah.
He's KD. He's simple. I'm Kevin Durant, KD. That's as flashy as he's going to get. He's so much about his teammates. He's so much about winning, and he's genuine. A lot of people know how to act and project a certain way. That is the way Kevin Durant.
On and off the court.
That's the way he was when he came out of Texas, when he was a rookie in Seattle. And success, the enormous success he's had, hasn't changed him an iota.
What did you see off the court? Who described the Kevin you saw as a rookie and second-year player as you coached him?
Delightful kid, would come over the house, play with my sons. I had the game Christmas Day, New York, Oklahoma City at New York. He runs over, the kids see him. I mean, he's their buddy. That's what he is. There's no pretentiousness whatsoever. I just love, he so wants to be the best player, and he's so willing to put the time in. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, Skip, I'd be in the office like looking at tape or doing something else, and I'd go to Brian Keefe, who was our player development coach. BK, why don't you go home? You got to be in early tomorrow morning, go home. Because I can't. Kevin's coming in 9:30 or 10 o'clock. He'd drive back in from Mercer Island. He's there all the time. He's investing time. Whatever is a perceived weakness, he's going to work on it. He's going to be in Barcelona and Madrid with the U.S. team this summer, and that's helped him. That friendship that he and LeBron have, the rivalry is there, but the friendship is there also from those two guys playing together for the national team. I can't say, he reminds me, different personalities, but he reminds me of Tim Duncan. And what I said about Tim is this. I think you can make the point Tim Duncan might be one of, if not the best power forward of all time.
Yes.
Kevin's going to go down as one of the best wings of all time. Both of them are better people than they are basketball players.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're better
Says a
people
lot.
than they are basketball players.
He may be the most humble, top-flight superstar I think the NBA's ever seen. And here's why I say that. Here's why. I mean, Tim Duncan, not saying he didn't have a personality, and he was just like Kevin Durant. He was all about team. He loved the ensemble. He really, really did. He really did. At Wake Forest, he always gave credit to Randolph Childress, who was a really good college guard. And then with the San Antonio Spurs, he's more like, say, well, Tony Parker, there's Manu Ginobili. Kevin Durant is all about team, but he's an assassin. He knows exactly what time it is. But he's never going to be the kind of guy that will say, well, the guys got me the ball and I did. They say, you know what? We were able to do this together. But when we needed to have it, my teammates trusted me, and I trusted my teammates. A guy like that would work in Oklahoma City because he doesn't have to worry about any kind of scrutiny. He would not be the same player, in my opinion, if he played in New York or Los Angeles, because the media relentlessness would just drive him completely nuts. And as great of a personality and humbleness that he has, at a certain point, it's going to get on your nerves. In Oklahoma City, he can be Kevin Durant, where if he said, I don't want to be the Slim Reaper in New York, that's back page news. He says, I don't want to be the Slim Reaper in Oklahoma City. They're like, okay, you don't want to be that, that's fine. That's why I think that humility makes him maybe the most humble, top-flight superstar I think the NBA has ever seen.
Maybe it's not a coincidence. Excuse me, Skip. Yeah. One plays in San Antonio, the other plays in Oklahoma City. Maybe it's, but I'll tell you what, I'd bet on these guys. You put one in L.A., you put the other in New York, they'll convert the media. Those guys aren't going to change.
Okay. By the way, to me, Tim Duncan is even more unassuming than Kevin is.
For sure.
Kevin has a little bit of star in him. He wants to be known. He wants to do his commercials. Tim just wants to be completely left alone in San Antonio. And by the way, Kevin has a force field around him. We do a lot of topics about him on this show. This is front page. To me, he's in Oklahoma City, but we're talking about the Slim Reaper here today on this show because we're interested in it. I was very interested that he distanced himself from that because he's taking it to a spiritual level. As you say, he wants to
shine a bright light.
Shine a light. And it's biblical because he has a Bible verse tattooed on his back.
Sure.
And I, for one, deeply appreciated the fact the other night when Doris Burke interviewed him on ESPN right after the game, and he had another big salvo of points. She said, kind of, what's up with this? And he said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I give all the glory to God.
Yep.
And he does. And it came across differently than I hear it sometimes on television.
It wasn't hokey, right?
It wasn't hokey, or it wasn't forced. It came across as 1,000% genuine. But I've talked to a lot of people who know him, and Kevin's a complex dude, too. Off the field, he'll have struggles with things, and sometimes you'll say that wasn't a very godly thing to do because he's still a kid growing up in his 7th year in the league, having started basically as a teenager. So I still think he's growing up. And you say he's got the assassin, but we'll see stretches, which is why I was critical of him on the show. We saw a stretch back dating to it was New Year's Eve it started, December 31st, where he had 3 straight games, 2 of them at home. And he just didn't show up in the fourth quarter. And I was saying, what is up with that?
Yeah.
Remember the Portland game? That was that December 31st game at home in Oklahoma City against a very good team, obviously an up-and-coming Western Conference rival. And he scored 1 point in the fourth quarter, and they lost the fourth quarter 27-16. I'm saying, where's the not nice Kevin?
Right.
But every once in a while, he'll push a button. Then he subsequently got mad in a game at Oklahoma City over a couple of foul calls that he didn't get or non-calls. And all of a sudden, when he pushes that not nice button, he is a terror, man. I mean, he will blow people off the court because his skill set is, to me, even beyond LeBron's skill set, obviously with his shooting ability.
I think with him, he's figured it out because he was giving a lot of people religion in January. And he's going to continue to give people religion because I think, you know what, when Russell Westbrook comes back, I'm still going to be Kevin Durant. I don't think that's going to be a problem, at least from his standpoint.
That's going to be
Russell
some
Westbrook
culture
could
shock
be a different
there.
story. Well, it's going to be culture shock with Russell Westbrook.
It took them a while to adjust. They were 5-5. Everybody forgets they were 5-5 from that Christmas Day game.
Right.
But he's figured it out, and part of it is what you said, Skip. It's that I'm not going to distribute the ball anymore. It's the fourth quarter. I'll take it, guys. And I'm sure Scotty Brooks had conversation. You know, another area he's improved, Skip, we talked about it before with Joakim Noah. Got a little sideways with technical fouls last year.
He did.
And he came right out and said it. You know, I got too preoccupied. I'm too into the officiating. I'm just going to let those guys go. I'm not going to let it affect me or my team. And improvement. But I mean, that's Kevin Durant. He doesn't fight it. He doesn't get antagonistic. He learned from what happened. I'm sure Scotty Brooks sat down with them and the people in Oklahoma City. But I'm fascinated by he and LeBron because they're the 2 best players, and they go in the summer and they analyze their game. They're both great students of the game. What do I need to work on? What can I be better on? Kevin consciously knew I got to be better with officials, and he's done that. LeBron knows I got to improve my free throw shooting. He goes and they're the best players in the world. They can put their feet up all summer. They don't. They go play for the national team. They work hard. They come back even better. Their thirst for improvement is incredible.
Expand on what happens when Russell Westbrook comes back.
Well, it's going to be a challenge, but it's a challenge that they're going to want. I don't see that as well as they're playing right now, and hats off to them because they're sustaining it. They're sustaining it against Eastern teams and Western teams. I just think when these other teams get right, there's so many guys out. Chris Paul is out. Kawhi Leonard is still out. Manu Ginobili is still out. When everybody is right to get through the West, they need Russell Westbrook. They'll figure it out when they come back. Russell and KD are playing better. When Russell was playing this year, they played well together. It's clearly going to be an adjustment. But you're talking a second-team All-NBA player. You're talking a guy who changes the game. A night when things aren't going well, when they're not scoring. Russell gets a steal, gets a dunk. He changes the dynamic. They'll figure it out. I just hope that he gets back early enough. The difference this year as opposed to last year, when Russell went down, it was right in the playoffs, like the second game. They couldn't do anything. They had to deal with it. They've had the opportunity to play a lot without Russell this year. It's helped Reggie Jackson. It's helped Jeremy Lamb a little bit.
No question.
But I think when he comes back, they're going to need time to play with Russell again. They'll sort it out because I in my heart, I can't see them winning the whole thing without Russell Westbrook.
All right, so who comes out of the West? They get back together. They play well together. Who comes out of the West? Spurs, OKC?
Those two. Flip a coin. I think it's going to be one of them. But again, in the West, the fascinating thing, playoffs are about matchups. All 3 rounds of the West are going to be a bloodbath, and you're going to catch a bad matchup. Some teams play other teams better. I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite. I think San Antonio right now is a big question mark because of the injuries. Before 2 weeks ago, we just said they were the best team in the West. So injuries are going to be a factor. Can L.A. continue to improve? Can Houston continue to improve?
Phoenix.
Golden State. There's so many other teams. Can they stay there? It's easy in the East. There's 2 teams. And Indiana, I'd give them a slight edge, but you're going to have to put a stake in Miami's heart come May.
Allow me to say, as a Spurs guy on the show, from what I have seen so far, I do not think the Spurs, if they get healthy, and I hope I'm wrong about this, if they even if they get healthy, can beat these guys playing at the level in Oklahoma City that they're playing at. Now, Russell took 102 more shots a year ago than Kevin did. So they're going to have to figure that out.
Exactly.
But the third wheel here is that guy Ibaka, and every night I'm seeing them pick and roll with a 7-footer who can step back and shoot 3s or jump shot 2s
12 for 12
and go 12 for 12 on any given night. Well, that's hard to beat, man.
That's one of those matchups that may not be a good matchup for San Antonio.
I agree.
So,
it's rough, man.
Didn't have to go through them. So it's going to be interesting to see who plays who, because there's teams that play Oklahoma City better than San Antonio does.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final takes. Rapid fire Q&A.
Rapid fire.
Thank you. Now, with the fellas. Up first, the Texas Rangers drafted Russell Wilson in the Rule 5 draft back in December, and his agent Mark Rogers sent a message to ESPNDallas.com that Wilson's schedule was too fluid to commit to spring training for the Rangers at this time. The question is, should he attend if he can? Skip?
I say yes on this one. I think John Daniels, the Moneyball wizard who now runs the Rangers, drafted him for real. I think it wasn't for show. And I think Russell would enjoy it, and I think the Rangers would actually long-term give him a shot to prove to them, because they love his character, the intangibles that he brings, that he could contribute to them. So if I were Russell, I would dabble slowly but surely and see how it played out.
I would say no, because if I'm Russell Wilson, enjoy the fruits of your labor that you're able to have with the Super Bowl by being Russell Wilson and also making sure that you don't go back and come back to the pack. He's had such a great first 2 years of his NFL season. Leave the baseball thing for another year. Worry about making sure you can defend your championship in the offseason.
I think he's enjoying his financial fruits right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Some benefits there. Yeah. According to the Dallas Morning News, Sean Marion is in favor of increasing the age limit in the NBA. I think the age requirement for coming into the league should be higher. It should be at least 2 years out of high school, 2 to 3 years minimum. Here's the question. Does he have a point, Skip?
He does not have a point to me, because I've heard this for years and years from NBA veterans in the winter of their careers, because they want to preserve roster spots, more roster spots for veterans making money, and I get it in Sean Marion's case, but to me, I wish there were no age minimum.
Yeah, I agree, because if it's going to be 2 years, fine, but it shouldn't be 1 year, because these kids are basically going to college if they're going to class, and they're worried about their NBA shot and their NBA dreams. If he feels that he is man enough to come into a man's league out of high school, let him take his chances, and if it doesn't work out, then that's on him more than anything else.
According to Jason Lloyd of the Akron Beacon Journal, 2 sources close to the Cavs have confirmed that barring a significant turnaround before the trade deadline, the roster will likely face upheaval. Upheaval is the key word. What do you think about that? What's going on with the Cavs, Skip?
What a nightmare that turned into.
Right.
I know Mike Brown a little bit, respect him, but it sounds like he's just lost complete control from everything that I read, and they have a lot of personalities that don't click or fit, and man, they're going to have to make some big house cleaning changes.
Well, whatever changes they make, who's to say it's going to turn the situation around, because this has become no longer an X and O's issues. This becomes Jimmy and Joe's who don't want to be there anymore. And I'm sure somewhere some Miami Heat fans are saying, Dan Gilbert, this is what you get for what you said about LeBron James.
Really? Taking all the way back to Dan in Miami.
Cavaliers fans don't forget.
Okay. Maybe LeBron comes back. Meanwhile,
that ain't happening.
Thank you so much for being here, Freddie.
My pleasure.
I'm Carrie Champion.